Hello, I'm your host Jim McLean. Welcome back to another episode of Banterflix, where each week we discuss some of the movies you should be watching on the big or small screen, and even some you should be avoiding. Let's see what we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be reviewing Mortal Kombat 2, which is out in cinemas now. We'll see if our pick of the streams, Joe Fria's queer-tinged horror movie Shadows of Willow Cabin, is worth a watch. And we'll wrap up as we chat about Hard Hawk's screwball comedy Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which is heading back to the big screen at the QFT here in Belfast as part of the BFI's National Marilyn 100 season. So that's what we've lined up for you this week. Joining me in the studio here in Belfast is the lovely Phil Higginson.
Hi Jim.
Phil, big week here in Northern Ireland. Of course, it's the Balmoral show. I'm sure, like me, you're excited. It is the main event for many people throughout the year here in Northern Ireland.
Yep, I love a good farmyard, so.
Well, yeah, what's wrong with farming? You know, we've got Animal Farm. Those are kind of movies. I was going to push in maybe some movie references and farms, but I will not, because after all, we are not a farming show. We are a movie, TV show. So let's move on and talk about some news.
So, what do you do?
I'm an annoyance to my superiors, a joke to my peers. They call me Spooky. Spooky Mulder. I'm the key figure in an ongoing government charade. The plot to conceal the truth about the existence of extraterrestrials.
Well, I would say that about does it, Spooky.
It's mutated.
Into what?
I can't tell you what killed this man. I'm not sure anybody else could claim to either.
These men have been secretly negotiating a planned Armageddon.
And you have conclusive evidence of this? Yes.
I'm already way past the point of common sense here.
I can't quit now, Scully. I need you on this. It's a global conspiracy with key players at the highest levels of power. It reaches into the lives of every man, woman, and child on this planet.
You've seen more than you should.
Then you must take away what he holds most valuable.
I'm taking you back, Phil, to the 90s when everybody wanted to believe. So that's Mulder and Scully in action in their heyday. Gillian Anderson, the lovely dreamboat that is David Duchovny. But we're not getting this reboot. Now, we don't know too much about it at this stage. We do know that it is slowly adding an impressive ensemble cast. We have earlier this week I should say, but it confirmed that fresh from her Oscar-winning turn in Weapons, Amy Madigan is joining the cast along with Steve Buscemi, and I guess people will have seen him most recently in the second series of Wednesday. Now, I don't know, Phil, were you a fan? Are you old enough to remember the good old days? This is where I feel old, and I remember the heyday of staying up late watching the X-Files, first on BBC, then it moved to Sky, and then it kind of went on a bit downhill with its heavy alien mythology. But X-Files has been back in the news of late because the movie we just showed a clip of was talking recently about the hantavirus. So maybe, who knows, the truth could indeed be out there. But were you a fan of the X-Files when it first hit our screens?
I love the X-Files. I think I was a little too young for it as a 90s child. So I was just the right age to be terrified of it. And then I got a little bit older and I realized it's one of the best shows ever made. So yeah, I'm really excited for Ryan Coogler's possible reboot, possible continuation.
What would intrigue you more? Because I'm someone, as I say, I loved that series. I was just the right age, the right time when you think about all the kind of stuff that was going on about, as again, coming back to that trust no one, etc., the cigarette smoking man, the quest to expose scandal, to expose conspiracies. And it was just the right time for it, and it hit me. But I kind of alluded to there, the X-Files, I know it came back not so long ago with the original cast, etc. And it had disappeared into its mythology and got too heavily invested into its mythology with this inevitable alien takeover of Earth and hybrids and XYZ, and it wasn't as fun as it used to be. So I'm kind of hoping that this new reboot if it is, even if it is going to involve the previous cast members, or may involve some of the previous cast members, I want it to come in with a clean slate. I want it to be more Monster of the Week. I don't want big overriding conspiracies. But hey, in 2026, I guess we're in a world where overriding big conspiracies are very much, once again, the buzzword. But so what about you? What would you want? Would you want a continuation, or would you want a clean reboot?
I think I agree with you. I think a completely fresh reboot. We've had our continuation. It was frankly quite bad. It's about time for a reboot. And the whole vibe of distrusting your government in the 90s was very different than it is today.
Is it? Is it, Phil?
In the 90s it was mysterious.
Oh,
and
okay.
there could be this clever cabal all pulling the strings. Now it's just madmen tweeting at each other. It's much less shadowy and scary.
Yeah, well, look, as I always say, we will not let ourselves venture too much into politics. That is the realm of Slugger O'Toole. Here, as I said earlier on, we briefly talked about the Balmoral show here in Northern Ireland. We're not about farming. We're all about kind of the media, TV, movies. I'm intrigued by this, particularly when you see the likes of Steve Buscemi, Amy Madigan joining the cast. And we're going to have to wait and see. And another... talking of movie news, etc., we did get another trailer this week, and I know you're very excited about that. And before we discuss that, let's play a clip.
William, my sweet boy. I would give anything for us to be together again.
My grandfather believed the devil would return. If anyone read from the Book of the Dead.
Calm down.
So you were excited about this. This is going to be hitting cinemas in July. I quite like the last version. I think we talked about this briefly when the teaser was released. And I know we're not getting just one, but two Evil Dead movies. There's going to be another one next year. But I'm looking at your facial expression. You didn't know that.
That's
so it's
news
like
to me.
Christmas to you. And I know we're going to be talking about another horror movie later on in the show. But, life is good when you can go to the cinema and you know there's going to be a nasty, horrible, deadites on screen with some Evil Dead horrible action. Trailer looks, I don't want to call it fun because I think that would say a lot about me. But yeah, we have had a glut of good horror movies of late. And yeah, I'm all on board for another Evil Dead.
Yeah, it's about time. It looks mean-spirited, but in the right way.
Yeah, that's what we want. We want some mean-spirited horror. But look, that is out later this year. As I say, that's going to be hitting cinemas in July. I saw your face light up with glee when we mentioned it as one of the trailers that had been released since last week. So we thought we'd give you an opportunity just to talk about your love for all things Evil Dead. But, as I say, that's not out in cinemas. Let's move on and talk about something that is out on the big screen and we've both seen.
You want to know what makes a hero? It's not destiny. It's not something you're born with. It's searching for greatness.
Johnny Cage, you have been chosen for Mortal Kombat.
Then realizing you've had it in you this entire time.
Whoa! I really don't feel comfortable hitting a girl.
Don't worry. You won't.
Joe, send me back. I want to go back.
The rules of the tournament are simple. Our fates would not be settled by the size of our armies. They would be decided by combat.
So this is the new take, grittier, nastier. I think we should play a trailer at some point of the 90s original, which I have a bit of a soft spot for, but I am terrified to go back and rewatch Phil because I am afraid that the thought of Christopher Lambert as the character of Raiden, etc., it might just be too cheesy and maybe I just remember the soundtrack more than anything. But are you a fan of this new rebooted? We've already talked about the X-Files possible reboot continuation. This is the Mortal Kombat reboot, second installment. The first film set up very much the tournament, the aforementioned tournament. Now we're right in the middle of it with some nasty on-screen action.
Yeah, I love this. I couldn't really have loved this anymore. It was exactly what I wanted. It was doing, I think, exactly what it should have been doing. They got all the plot out of the way as quickly as possible. Fair enough, we'll grant you, all the dialogue was mostly just rushed exposition. But then they got that out of the way, and they had loads of karate fights, and it was really gruesome. What more could you want from a movie like this? The soundtrack, not as good as the 95 soundtrack. There wasn't enough techno. They were trying to be too cinematic and orchestral with it.
That's not what we want.
No, but everyone involved knew what they were making. Carl Urban especially was having the time of his life as Johnny Cage. This was a ball. And the action, it was really creatively choreographed. I think it was the action choreographer who handled Ballerina last year. And it really shows that they've gone above and beyond. Because it's brutal, but it's great.
Look, I always say this, the show, copy, rinse, repeat every week. As we were just talking there about the doom and gloom we find ourselves, apart from when we're at the Balmoral show, because we're all loving that. I sound like I'm obsessed with it, but I am from Tyrone originally. But there's something about this film in the sense that you can just go in, and I think it's clocking in, it's over an hour and a half long, so I think it's just under 2 hours. You can go in and you can switch your brain off, you can munch your popcorn, whatever you have at the cinema, I don't know, Phil. And you can just sit back and feel yourself getting a little bit, stupider. Because it's the screenplay is not going to test you. It's that sense of just what else are you going to get from a film that's based on a beat 'em up video game. You're going to get crash, bang, wallop, rinse, repeat. That's what you're going to get. And yeah, there is some nastiness in there. There was in the previous film, but I think what we get this time is the much needed introduction of Carl Urban's Johnny Cage, in the sense that he is bringing some humor. There's a bit of the kind of Galaxy Quest elements to his character, in the sense that he is this washed up actor, and the film is worth alone just watching, just for the kind of the little clippets we see early on of his action movies, and that is worth that had me kind of, I'm here, I'm on board with this.
I'd watch a whole spin-off if they made something.
Well, I am worried about this, because I do think, we live in a world now of expanded universes. We've had of late, we've had confirmation. I think the Fast and Furious is going to go from the big screen to the small screen. Loads of spin-offs there for anyone who just needs more thrilled nonsense in their life. I don't know if the Mortal Kombat, I don't know, because I was never a big fan of the video game. I don't know if it's big enough to kind of expand out. But for me, Phil, the first film was a little bit dry, in that sense that it approached the subject matter with a lot of gravitas and seriousness. And I guess if there is fans of the Mortal Kombat video game franchise, they would want that. And maybe you're a fan of the video game franchise, but it was too dry for me, and it just lacked the campy fun of the 90s original, the kind of sheer lunacy of all that. As I say, that great techno soundtrack, that were you in a nightclub or were you watching this cheesy 90s piece of cinema? Here, second time round, I found it much more fun, particularly because of Carl Urban. He gets much of the film's best lines. There's that kind of element of kind of Galaxy Quest, this washed up action movie star having to go and save the world to be the champion of champions. The late Chuck Norris kind of very much kind of channeling that ethos. And that, for me, worked much more, and I find much more engaging this time round, as opposed to the first film, where we had, I don't want to say it, but a bit of a damp squib of a central protagonist there with a tragic story. Not going into spoilers, we don't see too much of that person this time round in this installment. I think that switch was much needed. And again, I know the directors talked about this as well, about having more female characters front and center within the feature. All that, what he promised us from the first film, is here. But yeah, Carl Urban, definitely for me, the standout here.
Yeah, he injects a lot of much needed levity in the movie that was taking itself far too seriously. I appreciated there's a lot more fantasy elements to the sequel. There's a lot more, jumping around between different worlds and, different like realms of reality and things. I enjoyed that about it as well.
Okay, but as I say, we are going to have to move on. We're going to move on from the big screen to the small screen. I think, Phil, maybe you had more fun with this than me, because I think it was your lovely self when I mentioned, do you want to come on the show? She's like, can we review Mortal Kombat 2? So I'm guessing, before we move on, you're very much going to be the person. It's done, I think, it's covered its face, as they say, with the box office. You clearly would be on board for a third installment in this franchise.
Can't wait for the third inevitable installment.
There we go. Well, Phil, you're one round. I'm still on the fence. I will always, prefer the 90s version, but as I say, terrified to go back and rewatch it. Otherwise, I will judge my much younger self. Look, that's in cinemas now. Let's move on to something we can watch at the safety of our home.
What's upstairs? Oh, just some extra beds and storage. What were you doing up there?
Aren't you nervous at all? Some random guy asked you to come to his cabin in the woods. I should probably tell you something. I never once thought, I don't know this person. Maybe I shouldn't.
This isn't funny. Stop.
The electricity's still out. The water isn't working. All the food is rotten. How is that possible?
Phil, this is out on VOD. The reason why we're talking about this, basically being up front and center, is the production company, they got in touch with us, said, would we like to review this? I read the synopsis, was intrigued. We are nearly in June, we will have Pride Month. So I'm always looking for something a little bit different from my horror-loving, horror cinema-going experience. This is something that could be watched from the safety of your own home. What did you think, Phil?
I liked this. I didn't love this. I think it maybe needed a heavier hand in the editing room. I think it was maybe about half an hour too long. The two core protagonists had fantastic, believable chemistry, and I liked the sort of exploration of what it is to be haunted. They're haunted by their pasts. They're haunted literally by ghosts.
Yeah, because sometimes, Phil, and as someone who I know is a Ghostbusters fan as well, bringing that in there as well, sometimes not just houses or creepy castles, etc., that can be haunted. Sometimes people can be haunted by their own demons, their own past, and that's very much front and center here. We have two characters, different backgrounds, different kind of their own personal demons, their own personal trauma, and they find themselves, and I think it's a Big Bear Creek, forcing themselves in this remote cabin. Eventually, they find themselves in this pseudo sci-fi loop. They're forced to confront them. Like you, it's interesting.
Yeah, there's unusually for me in a horror film, sometimes spooky stuff was happening to be a shadowy figure in the background, and I think, yeah, get on with it. I'll get back to the drama between these two characters. I think they could have done with cutting out a few of the spooks, unusually for a horror film, because the core dynamics between the main characters was so interesting, and I wanted to find out more about what had led them to this situation. It felt a bit stretched.
Yeah, I would agree. I do think it needs to be edited with a chainsaw, in that sense that it's clocking in at nearly 2 hours. I think this sits at about an hour and a half. If you cut that out, I think there is pacing issues, in the sense like we kind of get this kind of almost kind of Shining-esque of these people in a remote supposed cabin, as I say, in Big Bear Creek. And it's that time, and you can really feel as a viewer, you feel it's like this is dragging a little bit. But I do know that it has been on the festival circuit. It has done well. I think last year, it screened at Grimfest, etc. It's done a few festivals in the States. It has delivered a fan base, and I guess for any filmmaker who's making a low budget feature like this, I think £35,000-40,000, you can, the sense that it is now there and available on VOD, that is a level of success. I am intrigued to see what this director does next. And if they learn, as someone who programs a festival, I know you're a regular attendee, Phil, of our shorts and some of our screenings as well. You see a director and it's not, their work's maybe not perfect, but you see enough there of, oh, there's enough interest in things. I want to see how you refine and go forward with your work and your career. I would be intrigued to see. And I think looking at the director's IMDb, because of course that is the encyclopedia of all things cinematic knowledge, other than Rotten Tomatoes, I think he is already in development on another horror feature. I would be willing to give it a go.
Yeah, I'd give it a watch. I enjoyed it enough that I'll grant him that. I'd watch more of his work, for sure.
Well, there we go. Look, as I say, mixed feelings. Maybe, Phil, you're still maybe much more enthused about Mortal Kombat 2. I know we don't do movie of the week anymore. I sense Mortal Kombat 2 maybe, but we have one more film to discuss. As always here at Banterflix, we do like to showcase local events and local screenings. And the QFT are taking part in the National BFI season Marilyn 100, celebrating the 100th anniversary of Marilyn Monroe, which would have been her 100th birthday. And a lot of screenings taking place. One of those happens to be Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Howard Hawks' classic 1953 screwball comedy. That's going to be screened at the QFT on the 13th of June here in Belfast as part of Lumi, their production, their young programmers. Before we discuss the film, let's play a clip of the trailer.
We're just two little girls from Little Rock. We lived on the wrong side of the tracks.
But Little Rocks or square rocks, these gals must have their rocks. Diamonds are a girl's best friend.
Yes, it was a great book. Greater as a Broadway stage hit, and even more gorgeous, glittering, and hilarious on the screen. With Marilyn Monroe as Lorelei Lee, the world's most fabulous gold-digging blonde.
I just love finding new places to wear diamonds.
And Jane Russell as Dorothy Shaw, the world's most talked-about brunette.
Mr. Esmond and I are going to be married.
To each other? Of course to each other. Who else to?
Well, I don't know about you guys. I always sort of figured Lorelei would end up with the Secretary of the Treasury.
So that's a look at the trailer for Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Diamonds are a girl's best friend, Phil. Even I know that. This was very much a film I grew up at home. As I say, earlier in the show, Tyrone Boy, my mum was obsessed with Doris Day and Marilyn Monroe. And I remember this being on. Screwball comedy, classic vintage Hollywood. The costume, the glitz, the glamour, the dance routines, the musical numbers, all here. Howard Hawks, again, fantastic director. I'm a huge fan of. And you actually said you hadn't seen this before. So first time viewing, watching the film, as we say, we've watched this at home because you can, of course. It is an old film, as in 1953. It is available on VOD platforms to rent or buy. But if you want the true big screen experience, as we say, it is screening not just here in Belfast, but on cinemas, taking part in this Marilyn Monroe 100 season. It's going to be back on the big screen, so you will get a chance to see it on the big screen. Having just watched the film, we've watched it at home. Of course, we should say you can pick it up on VOD platforms, you can rent or buy, but it is heading back to cinemas for this Marilyn Monroe 100 season. Is it worth a trip to see it on the big screen, Phil?
Absolutely, 100%. Not only had I never seen this before, I'd never seen a Marilyn Monroe film before. So going in, I didn't expect it to be this wacky, farcical comedy. I loved it. It holds up today perfectly well. I was surprised. The standout for me now wasn't Marilyn Monroe, it was Jane Russell as Dorothy, her sarcastic friend. I just thought she was hilarious. The whole movie, all the gags, still completely sharp today. The song and dance numbers, brilliant.
There is elements, I will say this, there are elements of the film that have aged like milk. And you will get that. You will get that with a film, unfortunately, going back, 1950s, there is always going to be elements there. But there's parts of it are still kind of feel way ahead of their time. In that sense, there's a couple of musical numbers, particularly with the lovely Jane Russell, where it just feels like this feels much more modern than what we would give it credit for. I guess of the two, as a performer, at this stage in their careers, Jane Russell, much more seasoned performer. She's much more confident. Marilyn Monroe has not talked in the past about having an enjoyable experience working on set on this film. I know she has been she was highly complimentary of Jane Russell, but I think you forget just what that kind of class. Look, I'm a 43-year-old man. Marilyn Monroe, you just forget just how, and I'm trying my best not to be kind of that guy, because we're two guys here talking about films, but she is absolutely kind of the definition of the blonde bombshell. But she holds her own against Jane Russell. I would recommend, Phil, there's other films within Marilyn Monroe's back catalogue. You seek out, where she had been acting for a little bit longer. The likes of Some Like It Hot, just absolutely fab Billy Wilder comedy. And of course, that iconic scene from The 7-Year Itch. Just a great performer. And I guess the likes of this programme that's happening, not just here, as we mentioned, it's happening across the UK. Someone like you will maybe now be wanting to check out what's happening at your local cinema so you can see these films, because you've never, as you've said, you've never seen Marilyn Monroe on a big screen before.
This wouldn't have appealed to me at all had I not been asked to watch it. Now that I have, I probably will seek out more, so I may find myself going to the cinema to see these.
Well, there you go, Phil. I feel like our job here is done. Seek it out. You don't need to just go see Mortal Kombat 2 in the cinema. Sometimes you just need a bit of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. So yes, absolutely fun. Great film. As I say, parts of it have aged like milk. Other parts of it, those iconic musical numbers, still, you just forget just the power, the beauty of the work that went into that classic golden age of Hollywood. That maybe now, when we get so much CGI, etc., and special effects, we want more. We want more musical numbers. And look, we are going to go and we're going to write a Balmoral show themed musical number, Phil. But we're out of time, so all that's left for me to do now is thank your good self for taking time to come into the studio.
Thank you, Jim.
And thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back next week with another episode. But for now, until then, goodbye.